Thank you for joining today's conference call with Governor Andrew Cuomo. I will now turn it over to Governor Cuomo.
Good morning, guys. This is Governor Cuomo. Please pronounce my name correctly as you hear it. Melissa DeRosa, Commissioner Zucker, Robert Mexico, Kelly Cummings, Beth Garvey, and Gareth Rhodes on the phone. The CDC made another change in the vaccine policy. Seems change is constant with the CDC. And I'll tell you the truth, I'm looking forward to the incoming administration to get a hold of this, because this federal policy is making it extraordinarily difficult. The CDC just announced that states should open up vaccines to 65 plus. Okay? This is another major change in a very short period of time. It's not just 65 plus. They suggest we open it up to 65 plus and immunocompromised. And they don't define immunocompromised. And immunocompromised is a category that can be defined a number of ways. Obviously, it's people with cancer, chronic kidney disease, COPD, Down syndrome, heart conditions, obesity can be considered immunocompromised. Pregnancy, sickle cell, smoking can classify a person as immunocompromised. Type 2 diabetes is immunocompromised. Asthma. So that has to be defined. But just so we understand what's happening now, the federal guidance started with prioritized healthcare workers, which made sense, because if nurses and doctors get sick, then the hospitals collapse. And that's what we're looking at as a worst-case scenario around the country, right? That's California. That was Italy at one time. And if a nurse or doctor gets sick, they come in contact with a lot of people. They could be a super spreader. And for us, keeping the economy open is all about the hospital capacity. The prioritization for the healthcare workers then melted into prioritization for essential workers, police, fire, etc. That then morphed into prioritization for 75 plus, because they have the highest rate of mortality. And that now morphs into 65 plus and immunocompromised. Just to give you an idea of what that now does, that is a population of 7 million New Yorkers. 1A was 2.1. 1B was 3.2. You just added 1.8. The immunocompromised number we don't even have yet, because it depends on how you define it. But you have a population that's eligible now of about 7 million. We receive 300,000 dosages per week. That has not changed. The federal government didn't give us an additional allocation. At 300,000 per week, how do you effectively serve 7 million people, all of whom are now eligible, without any priority? So in other words, if I'm 90 years old, I'm in the same class as a person who's 65 plus. If I'm 90 years old and I have cancer and heart disease, I'm in the same category as a person who's 65 plus. Nurses, doctors who still haven't been vaccinated, and there's hundreds of thousands who haven't been vaccinated, are now in the category of 7 million. So the policy and the intelligence of the federal system eludes me. but we will do the best we can. But this is I happen to be Christian, loaves and fishes situation, right? 7 million eligible people, 300,000 dosages per week, and 7 million people who desperately want the vaccine quickly. Now, we've opened up the largest distribution system ever operated in the state of New York. All the pharmacies, and there are thousands of pharmacies that are coming up to speed, and state-operated sites, and county-operated sites, and doctors' offices, and federally qualified health centers. And the unions of the essential workers have been very helpful. A lot of the teachers' unions are self-administering. Police are self-administering. Firefighters are self-administering. So the entire distribution system is open. But at the end of the day, you only have 300,000 dosages for a population of 7 million on the other side. I said in the State of the State, patience, we need patience at an impatient time in history. This compounds the request for patience because how do you say on one hand 7 million people are eligible, and then on the other hand say we only have 300,000 dosages per week? But there will be a new federal government, and the new federal government at the top of the list has to be increasing the priority of production of dosages. You need more vaccine, whether it's Johnson & Johnson or Oxford AstraZeneca, or they no longer stockpile the second dose and they release the second dose. Those are all decisions they have to make. But they have to make those decisions. They did a webinar here. I did a message on the webinar. The priority is open 1A, 1B, and now 65 plus, and we have to put out a list of what's immunocompromised. But within the distribution network, the hospitals and the county department of health, the hospitals have to continue to prioritize hospital workers because our number one risk is still collapse of the hospital system. That is our number one risk. And we're seeing it in states all across the nation. And we are balancing on the head of a pin our hospital capacity. This UK strain is the X factor. And I'll get to that in a second. But if that UK strain increases the infection rate the way they expect and the way we are seeing, we're going to overwhelm the hospital system. The biggest capacity element in the hospital system is we're losing staff. We're losing staff because the staff is getting sick from COVID. That's why continued prioritization of the hospital staff is key. And in the webinar, we said hospitals must continue to prioritize hospital staff. County health departments should focus on the essential workers, police, fire, etc. That's who they deal with. City health departments and pharmacies, the general public, because they're best equipped to handle the general public. Remember, pharmacies do the flu vaccine. 50% of New Yorkers take the flu vaccine. But pharmacies have are accustomed to scheduling vaccines and dealing with the public. And now it's going to be a massive number of public, between 75 plus and now 65 plus. But that we're going to have to do. So focus on the populations, especially doctors, nurses, so we don't overwhelm the hospitals. The UK strain is the X factor. The federal government, the CDC, says the reason they're moving up the population to 65 plus is because they're afraid of the UK strain. Again, if you don't have the vaccines to give them, I don't know what opening up the eligibility does. But UK strain nationwide is up to 80 cases. And this, again, is just a situation that did not have to develop. The United States did not ban or test people from the UK, even though 120 other countries did. When you don't close the front door, don't be surprised when you have the UK strain here. It's now up to 80 cases nationwide. It's up to 12 cases in New York. We found 8 more cases. So we have 12 in New York, and we have 80 in the country. And that's what is panicking the federal officials, with good reason, because this is a much higher rate of infection. As far as our numbers are concerned, today is day 318. We did about 196,000 tests. Our positivity rate without microclusters is 7.6. With microclusters is 7.7. Positivity in microclusters is 8. 164 New Yorkers died. May they rest in peace, and may their families have peace. Hospitalizations are up 281 to 8926. ICU up 66, 1492. Intubations up 18, 909. If you look at the numbers over the past 2 weeks, you could see a flattening in the numbers after a spike from Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year. We said we would aspire for a flattening in late January. You could argue that you start to see a flattening now. Positivity in almost every region is down from the high during this holiday spike. Number of hospitalizations. This is from just about Thanksgiving, okay? New hospitalizations was about 100 a day. Let me give you this per week. 100 per day, 131 per day, 152 per day, 164 per day, 100 per day, 165 per day, 111 per day, and this past week, plus 48 per day. So you could see a post-Thanksgiving increase growing through Christmas, growing through New Year, and starting to flatten. By region now, 7-day average. Mohawk Valley tops 9.5, Long Island 9, Capital Region 9, Finger Lakes 9, Mid-Hudson 7.8, Western New York 7.6, North Country 7.6, Central New York 7.2, New York City 5.9, Southern Tier 4.6, statewide average 7.2. By borough, New York City, Bronx is highest, 7.4, Queens 6.7, Staten Island 6.6, Brooklyn 5.9, Manhattan 3.5. Good news to see Staten Island no longer at the highest amount, and I hope it seems like that community is responding. In terms of hospitalizations, Capital Region is 0.05. Well, let me give you this in order. Mohawk Valley is highest, and Finger Lakes is highest at 0.07. Then Long Island at 0.06. Everyone else is 0.05 or 0.04. We are going to accept the federal guidance of the 65 plus and the immunocompromised. I don't want New Yorkers to think that we are not doing everything we can to make them eligible for the vaccine, because I want to keep people in New York as calm as we can keep people in these anxious times. And I don't want people to think that people in any other state are eligible when they are not. But the dose of reality is great. Now we have 7 million people eligible, and we still have a drip, drip, drip from the faucet of federal dosage availability at 300,000. Let's take a couple of questions, operator.
As a reminder, to ask a question, please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. Again, that's star 1 to ask a question. Please stand by while we compile the Q&A roster. Your first question comes from Andrew Schiff from wabc-tv. Your line is open.
Governor, good morning. Hope you're doing well. Given the frequency in which you've talked about how critical it is to prioritize healthcare workers, even before the CDC changed their guidance today, why did you change your mind on Friday and open up 1B when there were still so many healthcare workers yet to vaccinate?
Well, part of it is, Andrew, you're trying to do, you have sometimes competing priorities, right? The more people get vaccines, the better, period. B, if you have to select, you want to select healthcare workers first, because that's in everyone's interest. If the hospitals collapse, Andrew, it hurts everyone. It hurts 22-year-olds, 44-year-olds. It hurts everyone. Look at California. If you die in an ambulance, if you die on a gurney because you can't get into a hospital, that hurts everyone. We gave the hospitals 3 weeks to do hospital workers. We then opened up the distribution for hospital workers to county health departments, etc. At the same time, we have to balance the demands of everyone else because you have an anxious population. We're doing healthcare workers, and then the police start to say, how about us? And the teachers say, how about us? And firefighters say, how about us? And then the 75-year-olds say, how about us? Then the CDC says, yeah, and don't forget 65 plus. You want to treat everyone fairly, but prioritize the need that benefits everyone. And that's the balance we're trying to strike. The CDC, every time you suggest opening it up to a new group, that group then demands their rights, right? I'm 75 plus. Where's my vaccine? Now I'm 65 plus. And by the way, this immunocompromised category, depending on how you define immunocompromised, if smoking is immunocompromised, if asthma is immunocompromised, diabetes is immunocompromised, I mean, that's going to be a tremendous category. But the balance is between shoring up the healthcare system and providing people the sense that everyone is being treated fairly, and doing that with loaves and fishes. That's the balance we're trying to reach. And also, Andrew, remember, even within this system, there are 3 main distribution points, or 3 main populations, right? You have healthcare workers, that's 1A. You then have 1B, which are the essential workers, police, fire, teachers, etc. and then you have the general population. We have prioritized among the distribution points. Hospitals must still prioritize healthcare workers. County health departments, your case, the city health department, they should prioritize essential workers, police, fire, teachers, etc. The pharmacies prioritize general public, 75 plus, now 65 plus. But we have maintained the prioritizations of the hospital workers, nurses, doctors, still for the hospitals. Hospitals still must prioritize hospital workers. County health department, city health department, you do the police, fire, essential workers because that's who they work with. Pharmacies, you do the general public because that's who you most often and best deal with. So the prioritization for the hospital workers continues because that is everyone's priority. And by the way, from a moral point of view, everybody celebrated the nurses and doctors, right? You and I don't care how old we are, we're not walking into an emergency room every day dealing with COVID positive people. And if I get sick or you get sick, we're not a super spreader. A nurse or a doctor is. And if your studio closes down, people don't die. And if my office closes down, people don't die. Hospitals close down, people die. So the priority remains for those hospital workers. Next question, operator.
Your next question comes from Shannon Young from Politico. The line is open.
Hi, Governor. How are you?
How are you?
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Yep, just wanted to follow up on the amount of doses that New York is getting weekly. The Trump administration said this morning that they were going to release all doses and not hold up that second dose back. So have you gotten any indication on whether that 300,000 a week number is going to go up because of that?
Yeah. Let's just be clear. The 300,000 we get for first dosages, they don't give us the second dose, okay? The federal government stockpiles that. The theory is they don't want to give it to a state because then the state could dispense it as a first dose, and then they don't have the second dose when that person becomes eligible for the second dose. There is now a debate federally whether they should release the second dosages to use as first dosages. That debate goes on. They have not yet said what they're doing, if anything, and we still only get 300 dosages per week. Dr. Zucker and Melissa have had conversations. So, Dr. Zucker and Melissa, do you have any update on that?
No, Governor, I would say unless Dr. Zucker has heard more recently than I have, they have not given us any additional information. And in a lot of ways, dealing with the federal government right now is like deja vu all over again, dealing with them in February and March. The guidance is constantly shifting. The information is not accurate or timely. They're expecting people on the ground to make massive policy and operational changes on a dime, I believe, because they're feeling political pressure, but at the same time giving us little to no guidance and information to implement it. So as of this phone call, we have not heard whether or not or what amount we're going to get increased on doses unless, Dr. Zucker, you've heard something more recently than I have.
I haven't heard anything. I've been on the phone with the CDC, and I haven't heard anything new. I concur with what you're saying, Melissa, and Governor.
Yeah. And Andrew Schiff, just to give you the a fulsome answer, nurses, doctors, healthcare staff are still prioritized by hospitals and what's called FQHCs and all ambulatory centers, which are all the walk-in centers, the urgent care centers, etc. So they, by law, must prioritize hospital workers first. then county health departments, city health departments, you do the essential workers because that's who they deal with, right? In your case, New York City, the New York City Police, the New York City Fire, New York City Teachers, City Department of Health deal with those 1B workers, pharmacies, you handle general public 75 plus, now 65 plus. Also, the pharmacies don't want to get into eligibility determination. In other words, a pharmacy is not going to be able to figure out if you're a healthcare worker who is eligible, do you work in a food store or not. The pharmacies don't want to get into that business. The pharmacies want to do age eligibility because that's simple, right? They do that now. You have to buy cigarettes. You have to show age eligibility. You want a vaccine. You have to show age eligibility. Opposite end of the spectrum from tobacco. Age eligibility is easy. Show me your driver's license, your birth certificate, your state ID. But they don't want to get into determining whether or not you're a police officer, whether or not you're a volunteer fireman, whether or not you are work in a podiatrist's office. They don't want to get into that business. So what we did on the webinar, pharmacies, you do the general public, county health department, city health department, you do 1B essential workers, hospitals, ambulatory centers, urgent care centers, FQHCs, you do the hospital workers who are still the priority. Operator, next question.
Your next question comes from Andrew Donovan from Channel 9. Your line is open.
Governor, I hope you're doing well and having a great day. Two unrelated questions. First, the 300,000 doses. Is that saying the federal government has a huge storage of supply and not releasing enough, or is this still a production issue in terms of limitations on Pfizer and Moderna getting enough vaccines even to the federal government? Is that really the crutch of the problem? The second question, can you update us on any kind of security enhancements of the state capitol after the FBI said that all state capitals are a threat as we move toward Inauguration Day?
Yeah. Good question, Andrew. On the federal supply, it's primarily the production of the vaccine and the federal government's acquisition of the vaccine. It is the Pfizer-Moderna production and this country's ability to purchase from them. Pfizer did not participate in Operation Warp Speed, so they have no contractual obligation to the federal government, right? Pfizer is selling to Israel, selling to the UK. They're just selling. So it's our ability to purchase, the federal government's ability to purchase from them. It's the federal government's ability to approve other vaccines. Johnson & Johnson wants to get approved. Oxford AstraZeneca wants to get approved. You have all these pharmaceutical companies that are now trying to produce vaccines because this is a lucrative industry. Plus, I'm sure they want to save lives. There's a compounding issue that the federal government has been stockpiling the second dosages, which has a wisdom to it. In other words, you get your first dose. They give me, the state, the first dose for you today. You have to get the second dose in 21 days. They hold your second dose, and they send it to me 20 days from now, so they're sure you get your second dose. The theory is if they gave me your first and second dose, I may have given your first dose, your first dose, and then given your second dose to somebody else. And then you wouldn't have your second dosage available. And then that would be problematic, because if you don't get both dosages, then you're not fully vaccinated. They're now having a debate whether or not they should release those second dosages and just figure out how to get more supply later on. But that hasn't been resolved, and that's why I'm still only getting 300,000. In theory, they give me 300,000 a week. They stockpile 300,000 a week to give me 21 days from now, right? Second, on the increased security, yes, we got the FBI alert. State police are working on it, and we'll have increased security during that period of time. Also unrelated, but hopefully relevant. Today, I'm doing a second plan in the rollout of the State of the State action plans. This State of the State is different because we're trying to do two things simultaneously. We need to battle and win the war stopping COVID, and then we're planning for the reconstruction post-war. And how does the economy change? How does society change? What opportunities for us? What challenges for us? And what can we start to do? Today I'm going to be speaking about two things. One is accelerating the return of the arts to our cities. What is a city without the culture and entertainment that makes a city a city? And what is the viability of a city when you reduce the benefits, the culture, restaurants, theaters, and you increase the burdens, crime, homelessness, taxes? That doesn't work. So how do you accelerate the increase of the arts? How do you use science and technology to start to open up theaters and restaurants, etc.? The Buffalo Bills was an inarguable model and inarguable success. We're doing contact tracing, but the positivity was like 1.9%. And we did 7,000 tests. How can you use that to start to reopen businesses? Also today I'm going to be talking about broadband because, look, the economy does not go back to where it was. Zoom does not go away. That's not going to happen. This was a transformation that was accelerated, but probably would have happened naturally over the next 10, 15 years. Economy and people decided, I don't have to go into the office the same way. Lawyers were speaking to a large law firm. If a lawyer said a year ago to a client, I can't come to your office, I can't take you to lunch, I can't take you to dinner, I'm not going to take you to a theater, that lawyer would have been fired, and they would have gotten a different law firm. But now you have law firms. They don't have to go to the client's office. The people don't have to come into the office. You can do your research from home. You can talk to your client from home. I don't have to pay all that rent. You don't have to spend 2 hours commuting. It's changed everything. And anticipating the remote economy is going to be vital. And what's the one thing you have to have in a remote economy? You have to have broadband. Broadband, we are ahead of any other state in access to broadband. 98% of the homes get access to broadband. You know what the second element of the equation was? Affordability. Average cost, $50. So that's what I'm going to be speaking about today. And then tomorrow we're going to be talking about the green economy, and then the next day we're going to be talking about just the largest public sector construction redevelopment plan that the state has ever undertaken. And we know that works because that's what's been done in the past. Okay. Operator, one more question, and then we'll go to work.
Your next question comes from Anya Tucker from News 10 ABC. Your line is open.
Hello, Governor. Just a quick question here. What's being done or can be done to ensure that unused doses are not being wasted or tossed out? There are some other states that are relaxing their restrictions so that maybe pharmacies could offer them to the public on a first-come, first-served basis. What are you doing or thinking of or making sure to ensure that these are not going to waste?
I don't understand how you could have 7 million people chasing 300,000 vaccines every week and anyone not be oversubscribed. Everyone will be oversubscribed. The problem is going to be the opposite. And I said this to you guys last week. Last week we had 14 weeks at our current supply rate to take care of the eligible population. 14 weeks will now increase. We'll have 300,000 dosages per week for 7 million people. That means, let's do fast math. How long does it take to get to 7 million people at 300,000 per week? That has got to be roughly, I don't want to guess. Who has a number? Well, we'll figure out the number. Melissa has a point in the meantime.
Just so everybody is aware, state guidance says that you have to have standby lists so that if not everyone is scheduled for an appointment, shows up, you still have people to do it. Again, I find it very, very difficult to believe, given the current pool that's now eligible, that this is going to be a problem. But to the extent that there is, providers have to have a standby list so that if worse comes to worse, nothing gets wasted. And then also I see one question that's kicking around a lot on Twitter. When do the 65-year-olds, when can they start to register? The state website has been updated as of this call to allow people to begin scheduling for 65 and older. So that goes into effect immediately.
Yeah. But just so we're clear, the system that the federal government is pursuing, you have 7 million people now eligible. You're providing 300,000 dosages per week. That would take literally about 6 months to administer. So you're telling people today you're eligible, but you're simultaneously telling people we don't have enough dosages to get to you for the next 6 months. Is that helpful? I don't think so. I think it creates more frustration and more anxiety. I'm eligible, but you won't be able to get to me for 6 months. I'm only a governor, but I believe when President Biden becomes President Biden, this has to be the first thing he looks at, because I don't think this is going to build national confidence. I think it's going to create national frustration and suggest that the government is not capable. And the last thing we need now is people frustrated or losing belief in the competence of government. But I at least want New Yorkers to know the facts, because I've always been straight. Yes, 65 plus, immunocompromised, 1A, 1B, 7 million people, all eligible. Bad news, at the current rate we're receiving dosages, it'll take 6 months. Please just tell New Yorkers the facts so their expectations are tempered. We have learned in New York, if you tell New Yorkers the truth and the facts, they can handle it. But don't confuse them and don't gild the lily. Yes, you're eligible, but yes, at this supply, it takes 6 months. That's the truth, and those are the facts. 11:30. I know you're all going to wait for bated breath. Please tune in. Thank you very much. Bye.